So we have Danny Williams on the podcast. Thank you for coming on to the Mindset X podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I asked you before we started, I was like, how do I introduce Danny? And I reeled off a few different things, but really, like, you've got many different facets of your life. You've done some interesting things, which we're going to get into. But there was something that Joe actually said, and it was like becoming nobody. And this is, Ram Dass wrote a book about becoming nobody, and we talk about self-dissolvement. And like us, you're someone who's very ambitious. You come across as an ambitious, hardworking guy. We'll find out. But chasing a lot of the successes and the accomplishments, for me personally, has been something that has been both a blessing and a curse. It's put me into great situations, but it's also become a burden and held me back in so many ways. What I wanted to start with is, like, what do you see as the journey of Danny? How do you see the journey in the life of Danny as of 27 years?
Ooh, what a big question. I firstly can really resonate with what you said there about becoming and the dissolution, is that the word you use? Dissolvement?
Dissolvement, yeah.
Yeah, the dissolvement of self and the dissolvement of ego. That's something I can resonate with. My 27 years has been complex, as anyone who's 27 years old, their life will be complex. Everybody's got a complex life, right? Everybody's got a story. I've done many things in my life so far. I've been a model, I've been a coach, I've been a personal trainer, I've had an online business, in-person business, I've been on reality TV shows. And I think if I was to summarize or find a sort of common theme so far, it would be from the moment I was born until relatively recently, I was traveling in a direction, searching for things, similar to maybe what you've described there. Searching for things, be it validation, be it recognition, be it status. And somewhere along that journey, recognizing that those things aren't really the things that I need. And there's this sort of relinquishing that goes on, right? There's this sort of like, self-evaluation, you might say, where you're letting go of certain parts of your story, certain parts of your narrative, and also trying not to forget who you are in the process. And the last, I would say, like 4 or 5 years has been both turbulent and, also one of huge self-discovery and huge self-development, also self-dissolvement. And I would say the catalyst of that process, in terms of turning the other way, if you like, probably did start when I went on TV. Yeah.
Tell me about that then, if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course. That was like maybe what most people would know me for, if they do know me. Went on this huge reality TV show in the UK, Love Island UK. And it just, it flipped my whole world upside down. Both for good and bad, right? There's so many pros to that situation. There's so many things that it maybe did for me and rewarded me with, et cetera, et cetera. But also, as somebody going into that show at 21 years old, having little to no self-awareness at all, it really threw me into, I don't know if spiral is the right word. It was forced self-discovery. It wasn't voluntary. It wasn't like, let me go read a self-help book and figure out how I can evolve my mindset. It was like, am I allowed to swear?
You can say whatever you want, my
It
friend.
was like, fuck, I've got some demons in the closet.
Yeah.
And if I don't fix up now, I don't know where this is going to end.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we're going to go back to like my origin story and childhood and all that kind of stuff, but there was a lot that I hadn't processed, worked through, accepted, understood about myself. And it was brought to the forefront of my attention because now I was in the public eye. And that set this almost like ticking time bomb in my head. And it was like, I've got stuff to figure out, and I need to figure it out yesterday, not sometime in the future, not maybe one day when I get to it. Excuse me. It was like, and I guess this is where like it's a positive and a negative. I had this urgency, almost, there was like a non-negotiable essence attached to this self-development journey. It wasn't like like I say, pick up a self-help book and let me read listen to one podcast a week. It was like, if I don't figure this out, who knows what the alternative journey is going to look like.
Yeah.
And that really encapsulates the last sort of 5 or 6 years of my life. It's been this chaotic journey of positives and negatives, self-discovery, realization, acceptance, confusion, mystery, all of the above.
What I'm getting from the way you're talking about that is like it was coming from a place of scarcity or like running away from something or trying to get away from something.
Heavily,
rather than rather than like, okay, there's this pleasure island that I want to get to and I've got to do this step, I've got to go through this journey to get to pleasure island. Actually, it was like you said, my demons are coming for me. Where the fuck do I go? And I think I resonate with that journey. I was thrown into that situation as well, and I think a lot of people are. And I think your 20s are such an interesting period of life. Like I did not when I was let's say in my teens, I looked at my 20s like, oh, it's going to be the most fun time, and it's been incredibly fun. But man, it's been a hell of a lot harder than I thought.
It's not easy. It's a difficult time to navigate, and childhood is massive. The tools you have in your toolbox will largely determine the building you go on to build in your 20s. Your environment, your parents, like all of these things play a huge role in determining where your 20s go.
Yeah.
And it's not just a case of who has the minerals or who's the strongest, who's the smartest, who's like. I think really like it's more a case of letting go of the things which are holding you back subconsciously. And if we can let go of a lot of these things, I think success becomes like this natural thing. Like, if you give a tree or a plant very minimal, like water, sunlight, it will grow into this huge, brilliant thing, right? And if you sort of deprive it of its essentials, it's gonna be held back. And I think we are no different. Not to get all like spiritual and woo-woo, but like, I think success. I think success and the things that we're all striving for, in my experience, actually happen organically and naturally in the absence of limiting beliefs, in the absence of these, let's say, traumas, in the absence of these roadblocks. And I think a lot of it is just a case of getting rid of these roadblocks, as opposed to like becoming the strongest person in the world, building the best body on the planet, building a super successful business. Like a lot of the success I've experienced comes from the dissolvement, like you described earlier, like just letting go.
100%. And I think it's like the learned behaviors that we acquire along the way.
Oh my gosh, massive.
Yeah, like the skills are amazing. We need to develop skills if we want to create something in our lives, whether it's business wise, whether it's relation. You need to learn skills, right? It's a requisite for development and success and growth. But the things that have held me back in my journey are the learned mentalities, the mindsets, the behaviors, the habits, the things that I've realized actually they're not really true.
Yeah.
It's not real.
They don't serve you at all, right?
They don't serve me. They're not aligned with who I want to be.
Yeah.
And actually getting rid of those and getting more to the core of who I am and actually like who I believe I am, that's real like success and growth.
Can I ask, at what point in your life did you consciously recognize that?
Very, very recently. I'm 29, right? And I say 25. I started reading books when I was about 23, properly 23, 24. 25, I was like you. I was hit with a situation, a circumstance, which forced me to go deeper than just learning. And then I was like, okay, this stuff is gonna be a long road ahead of me of learning about myself, learning about how I can be better, and dealing with my own insecurities, traumas. I don't know. I don't really know how to answer that, because sitting here today, like, you only know what you know, right? You don't know what you don't know. So tomorrow it will be a different set of things, that a different accumulation of things that I didn't know today or last week. But I'd say on the journey, it's like at the age of 25, I started to really look at myself and think a bit deeper.
Interesting.
I've always been
The reason I asked that question, I find it fascinating, and I love to hear from other guys who have the capacity to be vulnerable, share in the way that you've just shared. I find it fascinating because as someone who has also had, hardship, traumas, etc., and maybe we'll go into that, I don't know. I used to think I was self-aware. I used to think I was a deep thinker. I used to think I was someone who didn't have these limiting beliefs. And I would happily, you can go on YouTube and find a podcast of me 5 years ago, and you would think that guy then had it all figured out. And little did I know then that I was still playing a role, running from fears, abandoning parts of myself because of shame, guilt, fear, all that kind of stuff. And subconsciously, I was still driven by negative forces. And only post, you just said a minute ago, like some circumstance happened to you which kind of forced you. It's forced evolution. Only on the other side of those practical examples, like we do the theory, right? We read the books, we listen to the podcasts, we do all of the theory, but only once you're like forced into action do you really, are you really kind of forced to grow and forced to evolve. And I think only since I did a fair bit of that practical application, am I like, I actually didn't know as much as I thought I did back then. Maybe I just said I did because I don't know what else you're supposed to do besides act like you know everything, right? Yeah. And it's funny now at 27, it's like the older I get, the more I accept how little I know. There's something quite nice about that. It's like, I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know where I'm heading. I don't know if this is the right thing for me. And that isn't a bad thing. No. Like, it's okay to not know the answers to things. It's okay not to be perfect. It's actually a good thing to be curious about the world rather than thinking you've got it all figured out. These are all things which I wish I knew when I was younger, and I just didn't. So that's why I asked the question, because I think it hits guys at different parts of their life. Yes. Normally when something serious happens. Yeah. And you, like for me, I think a lot about the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves and how close to reality those stories are. And I think the closer you can get those two paths, the better you'll do in life. Like if you can tell yourself stories about yourself which are genuinely true and help you move forward in your life, and that actually aligns with reality, the world that we're living in, you will go further than someone who's living in fairyland, right? And just tell themselves lie, even if they're limiting beliefs or whatever they might be. Yeah. And I think about that a lot, and I think these real harsh situations that happen to us, whether it's we're grieving someone, whether it's a traumatic incident, whatever it might be, it really forces us to close that gap. It forces us to be like, oh, reality's over there and I've been living over here. Yeah. If I want to get out of this situation alive, I need to bring these two worlds together. Yes. But because as humans we just crave like comfort and validation, success, whatever, sometimes it can be more optimal to keep those worlds apart. Sometimes that's good for those.
Well, it saves you the difficult things in the moment.
So it saves us pain, right?
It's very easy to just actually keep living that. And I talk about validation. When you're getting validation, especially from Instagram and social media, it's really difficult to pull yourself out of that, because you're getting the validation for the thing that you just put out, and it makes you think you're doing the right things. But actually, what if that's actually not the direction you deep down need to go in? It's difficult to pull yourself out of that. Mm-hmm. How was that for you, like coming out of Love Island and having, like, for example, having a following, having a personality that people knew, having eyes on you 24/7? How was that coming out into the real world?
Yeah, it was many things. Overwhelming comes to mind. Here's the thing. So I'm born into a all-white council estate in northeast England. I don't really know my dad growing up. He's the only black person I knew. I didn't really see any black people in my family. I'm always around, financial stress. a lot of stress in the household. I'm witnessing abuse and all these kind of not so great things, let's just say. And my childhood was kind of my norm. And I didn't know there was anything wrong with that. And the byproduct of all of these, let's just say, negative circumstances or bad cards I was dealt, the byproduct of that is like, I went out into the world not really knowing who I was, looking for external gratification, looking for validation from strangers. All of my self-worth and all of my identity was externalized to other people's perception of me, or at least what I thought other people perceived me to be. Now, this served me well as a child. It got me through.
It protected you.
It was a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
I know I wasn't short of friends. Like, I was quite funny. I was good at sports. I kind of coasted through school. And it did serve a purpose. Living that life served a purpose for me. Subconsciously, I wasn't doing this on purpose, but that served a purpose. Now, put that same individual on national TV in front of millions of people, and then the general consensus is that this person is not who I believe myself to be. Train wreck. Absolute car crash. Oh my God, as someone who externalizes their self-worth to other people's perception of him, now I start to feel like other people don't like me. I'm getting thousands of hate messages and trolls and things not going my way, let's just say. And it was the ultimate car crash. It was the death of my entire existence. Sure. In many ways. And I'm not, it sounds dramatic. It sounds like, oh God, fucking Crimea River. Do you know what I mean? It can't have been that bad. Relative to somebody who didn't know who they was, a 20-ish, just turned 21-year-old who lacked self-worth, lacked a sense of identity, had no real foundation that his mental health was built upon, and then you put him through this reality TV washing machine and spit him out. Yeah, it's hard.
Well, the death of the ego is the biggest wake-up call you can ever have.
Oh my gosh, and this is when I said before about you've got reality here and then you've got the life which you're convincing yourself you're living and they're not aligned. That was me down to a T. I'd convinced myself up until this point that actually I was living a great life. I wasn't aware that my childhood wasn't ideal. I didn't know I had unhealthy relationships. I didn't understand I was probably on a path to an alcohol and drugs problem. I didn't even know any of these things because the life I was living was nowhere near reality.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you put this person on a platform and by the way, like I'm not like David Beckham or Kim Kardashian, but when you come from nothing and then you have 500,000 followers and you're on national TV every day, like you do feel like you're famous. Like it feels like everybody knows who you are. Everybody's stopping you in the street saying, yo, Danny, oh my God. Yeah. Like you can't go anywhere without being stopped and recognized. So you do feel like everybody knows who you are, even if that's not quite the case. And that the anxiety that's attached to that, oh, I'm going to get stopped, I'm going to get approached, I'm going to get whatever, knowing that they think you're somebody who you don't think you are, that's
it's interesting.
A recipe for disaster.
It's interesting, like the way you're describing that and what you were saying as a child, like the seeking the validation and being that funny guy, the sporty guy, and being in those social circles. Like, it's funny, you got the thing that you wanted as a child.
This is it, exactly.
You got the thing that you wanted, but you realised it wasn't what you wanted.
This is it. This is what I have come to realise, and whether it's delusion or whether it's accurate, the silver lining I choose to see from my situation is that I got to the top of a mountain I was actually trying to climb, realised I was on the wrong mountain, and now it's time to climb a different one. Yeah. And I think it's important that everybody does that. I've not met a single person in my life who from the moment they were born began their journey up the right mountain. And their whole life was just seamless. There was no speed bumps. It was just, I know where I'm going and I'm going to get straight there and there's going to be no regrets and I'm going to make no mistakes. I think everybody to some degree gets to a point where they realize, maybe I shouldn't be here. Maybe I should be over there. Maybe I've been living my life with a set of beliefs and values that aren't actually aligned with who I've come to realize is the person I want to become.
Yes.
In which case, I need to change direction. I need to change the GPS. Like, I'm going in the wrong direction. And I think you might call that a midlife crisis. I happen to have that at 21.
Yeah.
And for that, that's the kind of silver lining that I see throughout all of that chaos.
But people think that that's you're at rock bottom when you're in that situation. But if you look at that on a macro scale, right? You think about a ship who they're trying to go from A to B, from one country to another country in the sea, right? You're not going in a straight line. You're going to be at one point probably going the total opposite way to where the destination is. But that's part of the journey. And I think that just to sprinkle a bit of optimism on this is like, as long as you have the resilience and self-awareness, then climbing up the wrong mountain is going to teach you, when you get to the top, you've acquired character development, you've acquired new lessons, you've got rid of a lot of things. You're a different person when you get to the top, and you're a different person when you get down to the bottom. Yeah. And as long as you have the resilience, or at least the awareness to be like, okay, let's look at another mountain, let's climb up that one, let's see what's up there.
Yeah.
The curiosity, I think one of the best traits to have is curiosity.
I know he gets spoken about a lot, but I watched the clip of Alex Hormozy recently, and he said something along the lines of, imagine the person you're trying to become. Imagine the ideal person that you want to be in a dream scenario. They're strong, they're courageous, they're resilient, they're disciplined, they're consistent, they're hardworking, all the above, right? What would you need to put that person through in order to end up becoming that person? It's not an easy ride. No,
you got to batter them.
It's not a free pass. It's hardship. It's backs against the wall. It's I don't know if I can do this. It's betrayal. It's deceit. It's all these things that you think are going to kill you, but they just don't kill you, and then you end up being really, really, much stronger because of that. And you only know that in retrospect. Yes. When you're going through it, you're going through it. It's like, I don't know if I can do this, and I had them days, weeks, months, where it's like, I don't know if I can do this.
I still have those days. Yeah. I have those days regularly.
Yeah, and 10 years from now, you will look back at those days when you were 29 and think, when I was 29, I thought I couldn't get through it. Thank God I had that period.
Yes.
Because it forced that evolution. It's very hard to sort of, to elect, to sort of voluntarily, I think the best example I can think of is like we go to the gym, both of us, we'll go to the gym and we'll go through a hard workout. And every now and again, we will have a workout where, for whatever reason, we just can't get ourselves going. It's quite tough. Like, we can't get to that peak, how hard we can push ourselves. And then also every now and again, we might have a pre-workout or train with an old friend or whatever. And you push yourself to new heights and you think, fuck, I wish I could train like that every day.
Yes.
And I think in life, it's quite hard to summon the energy to perform at that level and to force yourself to grow and to put yourself through hardship and to test yourself, challenge yourself to that same level all of the time. It's hard. But what can do that, which means you don't have to volunteer to do it, is these circumstances that are outside of our control, which happen to each and every one of us. Nobody makes it out of this life alive. We all experience loss. We all experience hardship. We all experience betrayal, whatever it may be. And those situations summon the energy better than anybody could, and that's, in my experience, what's forced a lot of my personal growth.
Using that same analogy, I think that when you go through those hard workouts, at the end of the workout, you get to a stage and you feel a type of way. Maybe you've done a high rocks workout and you feel fucked, right? You're on the floor, you're sweating, you're breathing heavily, you can't control your heart rate, you're in a bad way, but you feel good. Right? You feel good because you've done it and you've accomplished something. Context is everything, right? So you put yourself in that feeling, in that emotion of finishing that workout, how you physiologically feel after a workout, fine, cool. You're just going to give yourself a few minutes, going to get some water, and you're going to carry on with your day or go get showered or whatever. You take that exact same scenario and you apply it to just walking on the street. If you were to feel like that in a random period of your day, you'd call the ambulance and you'd go straight to hospital, right? And the reason why I'm saying that is because that's a familiar feeling after a familiar trigger, if you like, The gym workout makes you feel like this, right? I did a really hard gym workout. I feel like this. In business or in life, you're just in unfamiliar territory. You feel a certain type of way. Maybe it's anxiety, maybe it's depression, maybe it's, like you said, betrayal or grief, right? And that situation is the first time you felt like that from that specific event. So you're like, what's going on? What's happening? I don't need to feel like this. And you're trying to escape it. And I think that's a really interesting perspective, because it's like, well, you're only used to the gym analogy. You're only used to that because you've done it so many times. And it's okay, right? You're okay in that scenario. So I wanted to just play on that little analogy.
It's a nice analogy. It's I think we associate familiarity with perceived sense of control over the situation. If we've been here before, I back myself to be able to control all of the variables, and we associate that sense of control with safety. Yeah. I'm going to perform. Everything's okay. I'm going to be fine, etc., etc. And to some degree, it can be a bit of a barrier, because, like you said, we can find ourselves in business or life or whatever situation for the first time and be absolutely safe and fine and ready to excel. But if it feels unfamiliar, we might run the other way because we think, I can't control all of the variables, therefore I'm at risk, therefore it might not go well. And this is what holds all of us back to some degree. Definitely me in my life, it's held me back before. The second I feel like I don't know what I'm doing, this is unfamiliar, this is scary, this is new territory, let me go run back to safety. And I think entrepreneurship, especially starting a business, moving countries, all of these things, you have to learn to some degree to be able to trust yourself. You know, like there's that...
that is confidence. That the definition of confidence is trust.
Yeah,
when you break it down to confide.
There's a phrase or a quote I'm thinking of recently where it's like, when a bird lands on a branch, does it trust its own wings or does it trust the branch to not break? You know, like if the branch breaks, the bird trusts its own wings to be able to fly off and not fall to the floor and die, right? And I think, I can relate massively to that quote. It's a bit, however funny it might be, it's like, we are like birds with wings. We can fly ourselves if we need to, but we externalize we give all the power to the flipping tree, to the branch, and it's like, how many times can we put ourselves in a situation where we are not always forced, but we know if we need to, we can just fly away.
Tested,
and I think that is what, like you say, builds confidence. Like, I've been here before. I know that if that branch breaks, I can just fly away. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. I'm not gonna give up. Yeah.
I used to say that a relationship is the biggest mirror, right? And what I mean by that is, like, you get in a relationship and you all of a sudden realize you're not so perfect. I'm speaking from personal experience here. And actually listening to your story, listening to someone, speaking to someone who's been on reality TV, I'm starting to think that maybe that's a bigger mirror to all of your insecurities, all of your deficiencies, or what you believe are deficiencies. And I wanted to know from your perspective, like, what is that like you highlighted it a little bit, but what is that like? What is that like, really seeing yourself on that bigger stage, like as someone who wasn't overly confident themselves going into it?
As in, what was my experience like realizing that?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a big question. I guess a lot of what comes to mind as I'm sitting here now is like, you have got shit to deal with, and there's no more hiding from it. There's no more running from it. Everyone is watching, and if you keep playing these games, you're going to get found out. And what I mean by that is, I don't mean like in a cynical, like narcissistic, like crazy, toxic way. I mean someone who lacks self-belief, someone who doesn't understand themselves, someone who likes to get external gratification and needs to be validated by their peers. those types of people play games in order to fulfill their needs.
Yeah.
Whether that's chasing status, whether that's becoming a model, whether that's whatever it might, getting into relationships and the way that they see women or whatever it may be. And I think when I went on TV and then had this like public platform, whatever you want to call it, that really was the start of me looking in the mirror and being like, okay, there's some parts of me that I'm not particularly proud of. I don't think are going to serve me well if I keep going like this. Therefore, it's time to evaluate everything. And that evaluation wasn't a 4-week, 6-week, 6-month thing. Like, I'm still now. And it's funny that you mentioned relationships, actually, because it wasn't until a year and a half ago that I met my current partner. And even when meeting her, I was like, yeah, there's still so much that I'm working on. There's still parts of my identity, parts of my self-narration, shall we say, that I'm actually still trying to get away with. And a relationship holds that mirror up to you, and it's like, I guess I am still doing that in some ways. Maybe I need to go this way. I thought I'd figured that out. I think one of the biggest, I don't want to say pieces of advice because I don't want to come across like as an advice giver, but something I experienced myself was I got to a certain level of my self-development journey, let's call it, or self-discovery, where I had convinced myself that I had done the work, past tense. The work, as if there was a finite amount of work to be done, and I'd completed it, and therefore I was off the hook. Like I'd done my homework, and therefore I can have the weekend off. I've done the work.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people fall into this trap, and that complacency is the start of the work being undone. And that's where I found myself. I've done the work, therefore, and without realizing I was falling back into the old parts of myself that I decided I didn't want to be anymore. Hanging around with certain types of people, engaging in certain types of activities, alcohol, drugs, etc., etc. And it was okay because I'd done the work. I know it's not a problem because I know what I'm doing.
You're above it. Yeah.
How deluded, how complacent. And as someone, we're on the Mindset X podcast, right? As someone who works in this space, like you inherently understand that it's a never-ending journey. It's a never-ending pursuit. I don't think you arrive at a point where you've discovered all of yourself.
Yeah.
I think you're finding parts of yourself continually.
Yes.
So yeah, to circle back to the initial question, like what was that like? It was wow, there's so much work to be done. Then I felt like I'd done the work.
Yeah.
Then I found myself hitting the same brick walls that I used to hit.
Yeah.
Then I realized actually it's a never-ending set of work. Let's lace my boots up. Let's put the gloves on. Let's get to work for good.
Do you regret anything that you actually did on Love Island?
No, I don't regret anything I did on Love Island, but I will tell you one regret. Let me caveat this. I also have empathy for myself. I don't regret and beat myself up.
Yes.
I regret and have empathy for the person I was that made the decisions that he made. But I do regret that going on Love Island and taking that first step into the reality TV space was not completely predicated on my own beliefs and my own vision for myself. It was heavily influenced by the people I had around me at the time, my desperation for validation, and my, at the time, deep insecurities. I think if you removed those three factors, I wouldn't have gone on it. Now, does that mean I regret going on it? No, it doesn't. It means I really regret that things outside of me determined how me showed up. And that's a shame because those decisions aren't mine. And it's like one of the biggest chapters of my life in terms of changing the direction of, changing my trajectory, if you like. And it wasn't even to some degree, entirely my choice. And I think about that a lot. I do. I can't sit here and pretend like, I've done podcasts before where I'm like, I got no regrets and everything's great and I look at all the success and I've done loads of cool things and the truth is it's a really complex subject, and I used to get scared to be honest about it, because I know that other people think it's like this lottery ticket, fast track to success. How dare he complain? Must be nice, whatever. And that stopped me from speaking my truth for so long. But the truth is, yeah, it was a train wreck at times. So many brilliant experiences off the back of it, so many opportunities, but also so many hardships, many things to deal with, so many unexpected, like just one example, like the hate that I got off the back of it was so severe that all of my family came off social media. Certain people in my family are getting picked on at school because they're sticking up for me. I'm getting messages like in the thousands. I'm getting like death threats. I'm even like, here's something that nobody will know, right? For the first few weeks after leaving the Love Island villa, ITV themselves assigned me a security guard, and I couldn't go anywhere without my security guard because there was genuine fear that I might be attacked. And there was times where I would go into like somewhere in the public. I would go to like Westfield shopping centre in London, and within minutes it would be like, just seen Danny Williams in Westfield, tag a bunch of friends, let's all meet here, we're going to go and get him, we're going to go and beat him up or whatever it may be. And I'm like immediately abandon the shopping trip, go back to my hotel, which ITV are paying for, by the way, with my security guard. And that's like the severity, and sometimes I come across like I'm being dramatic and stuff, but 99% of people don't understand that context. And it's like, oh, maybe it was quite rough. I'm like 21 years old at the time. Crazy. Half of me is like, it's kind of cool. I guess I'm famous now. People know who I am. The other half of me is shitting myself. Like, I didn't know I was signing up to this, quite frankly. And yes, did I get a few brand collaborations off the back of it? Yeah, that's cool. But does it accommodate for that level of stress? Maybe. I don't know. What I do know is that before I went on TV, I was also like modeling full time, traveling and doing a bunch of cool stuff already. So I didn't have this like rags to riches builder to, working in a construction site, struggling, and then the next minute I'm like a multimillionaire. Like, I didn't have that story. So it was a really challenging thing to reconcile in my mind. Again, just a refresher of that context. Someone who didn't understand himself, didn't understand who he was, and his entire existence was predicated on how other people perceived him. And then I have this idea of like, well, everyone else thinks I'm successful, so am I successful? Everybody else thinks that I'm rich, so am I rich? Everybody else thinks I've got it easy. Oh, maybe I'm just being silly. Maybe it is easy. I don't understand how to navigate any of this because I'm just this like lost kid, So yeah, wow. Yeah, challenging time. But again, to bring it back full circle, like there's silver linings, there's things to pull gratitude from, that forced evolution. I would not be sat here today having a podcast with you, living in Dubai with my partner. The kind of person I am today is entirely based off the fact that I went through a bunch of shit.
Yes.
Like if I didn't go through all that shit, I'd just be a 27-year-old trapped in a 20-year-old's body. I'd just be the same person. Probably still, I'd be going to brunches here, if I'd even be here. I'd be going to brunches, drinking. Who knows? Maybe I'd probably still be in the UK, to be honest. I wouldn't have even considered moving countries. I just wouldn't have been in that headspace, And as much as I talk about the negatives, there are also a bunch of positives. And I think it's really important that I give a nuanced, like the full context.
Yes.
It's not just this like, you went on TV, therefore you're successful. You are a model, therefore you must not have insecurities. You live in Dubai, therefore you must have loads of money. Like, it's just not that simple. And humans are that simple. That's why podcasts are great, because we get to dive into the nuances, right? Yeah,
you dissect the actual emotions of that. Isn't it just what you said there? Thank you for being so open, by the way, and vulnerable. It's incredible.
Of course.
What you said about the modeling thing, like I did a bit of modeling. I don't do it much anymore. The reason why I started doing that was because I got approached to do a little shoot, right? But I was like, okay, this is a great opportunity. But the reason why was because I was riddled with insecurity. I was so inconfident.
It felt, as in the reason why it felt so attractive to you was because
I was like, if I do this, I can be more confident. I've had a fear of public speaking since I was a lot younger in university. And I was like, okay, so if I can stand in front of a camera and someone can take pictures of me and videos and whatnot, and I can pose and I can be this vain guy who just loves himself, maybe I can speak in front of people and actually talk in front of a group of highly successful individuals. So for me, it was like modeling was a mechanism to improve my confidence because I was insecure.
It's funny because in my experience, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. That plan only works if you're showing up authentically. If you're showing up as who you actually are and facing those fears head on as you and not as someone who's wearing a mask,
Yes.
you actually exacerbate the issue, not reconcile. You don't make it easier on yourself.
Yeah.
The more you get away with wearing a mask, being someone that you're not, pretending that you're confident, pretending like the whole fake it till you make it thing, right? The more you get away with it and people reward you for it and you think it's working, the more layers you're putting on top of
Yes.
the thing which you initially set out to try and improve and try and work on.
I agree.
That's been my experience anyway. And it's like, because similar, I wanted to get better at public speaking. I wanted to be more confident. I wanted to be more consistent on social media, something I really struggled with. And the reason why I struggled with it, all of these things so much is because I didn't know who I was and I didn't know how to show up as me. Therefore, how the hell can you talk in front of a bunch of people? How the hell can you consistently post on social media when you're a different person every single day that you wake up? And I'm not saying this is you, by the way, but for me anyway, I only started to genuinely get more confident. I only found it easier to be vulnerable like I'm being now and sharing my story and all this kind of stuff when I started to actually show up as me in practice, not just confidently wear a mask. I've been a model for 10 years. I haven't been confident for 10 years.
No.
You know, I've done the odd public speaking thing on several occasions. I've done things which would terrify other people, but never really done it as me authentically until relatively recently.
Yeah.
And therefore the confidence, the self-worth, all the things that I've been talking about never really got worked on in my experience.
Yeah.
Like I was just adding layers on top of them.
Yes.
And it made it more difficult. It actually exacerbated the problem. I'm not sure if you had a similar experience, but that's just been my experience.
I did. I did. I think that for me, I showed up as someone, well, showed up in the modeling environments as someone who knew that I never wanted to be a model. I never wanted to be, I never wanted to have the label as a model. I wanted to do bigger things in terms of my coaching career. I wanted to go and, I didn't just want to be a coach, I wanted to be a speaker. I wanted to be a leader. And I knew I could only do that if I got more confident. And this was a mechanism, an easy way in for me. So I think that I showed up as, I guess it's quite a hard question to answer. I guess I showed up as myself because I always had the lens of like, I'm not trying to fake my confidence here. I'm actually really confident standing in front of this camera and I really don't feel good. I really don't feel like I belong in this environment, and that's okay. So I just lent into it.
Yeah, so that's
I really lent into it.
So the plan worked then, presumably. Like so you put yourself in. It's like exposure therapy, right? Like you expose yourself to the thing, knowing it was a thing you was actually scared of.
Yes.
Understanding that the more you expose yourself to it, the more comfortable you would feel as a
100%.
consequence.
That's exactly it.
So yeah, so in that case, you are being authentic.
Yeah.
You know, like you know what you're signing up for. You go and do the thing which you've signed up for, and then you reap the reward of the thing. Like
And
that is the.
there was points along that journey, just before I switch with Joe, by the way, but there was points in that journey where I was like, I feel validated. So I had to keep catching myself. But I think that I started this at a time where I was beginning to, when you asked me about when did you consciously become more self-aware? By the way, my mentor once said to me, once you think you're self-aware, you're not self-aware. So just for anyone listening, just be careful of that.
It's so true.
So there was points where I was like, wow, that shoot gave me that validation. I look pretty cool. I look confident. I look like I'm in flow. And I was like, I feel good. And I was like, whoa, Harri, take a step back a minute. You're not where you want to be. That's not what you want to do. This is what you want to do. And I think that because I was present with it, and I was constantly catching myself in that environment and getting validated, I was like able to step back out of that and not get pulled by the validation, and because it's a very validating job, isn't it?
Yeah,
would
that's
you say?
so interesting, because it's like, yeah, the thing which helped you to persevere and almost like not be too sucked into that low-hanging fruit was that the fact that you had an overarching goal.
Yes.
You had a bigger mission. And it's a really interesting point that you bring up there, because something, again, which I've dealt with or tried to wrestle my way through is, surely if you have a mission or a purpose or whatever it may be, which is important enough to you, you would never need to like remind yourself of it.
Yeah.
You would never need to check yourself, like you just said. And you would never be tempted by the low-hanging fruit. And I don't know if you can relate to this. I went through a period also where you, for want of a better word, relapse, and you seek validation. You go after the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
And that is immediately followed by a period of guilt. It's like, oh, you said this was important to you. You said you wanted to be a coach, speaker, a key person of influence, whatever it may be. Now look at you, being the same old person you always were. And I actually found myself going through that period too, where then it causes you to question whether your mission is genuine, whether your purpose is real. And something I want to share now is that it's absolutely normal to have those experiences, to still be tempted every now and then. We're human beings wired for social connection, wired to make sure that we're perfectly embedded in our social hierarchies. That means that we need to be validated by people around us to some degree. So it's perfectly normal. And I'm curious to know, like, did you experience that for yourself when you had those, like, this feels kind of good, I'm in flow, I'm the guy? Did you have a period of like, oh, come on, Harri, fix up, it's not what I'm after?
100%.
Yeah, interesting.
Many times. And I think just because of where I was in my life and my journey, my coaching journey, I was able to snap out of that. So I think that it's just that, and that's what I said, like level of presence within that allowed me to rise above it, however you want to frame that.
Yeah, I guess as well, we, especially now in 2024, 25, like we compare ourselves to the ideal standard that we see online.
Yeah.
And we assume that those people never falter. We assume that they never give in to their temptations. They never have a bad day. Because they only show up as their best, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So we have a day when we like get validation, or we get the thing which we've told ourselves we don't want anymore, and then we beat ourselves up.
Yeah.
Because we think that like we should be like Tony Robbins or Stephen Bartlett or whoever we aspire to be like, or whatever. And actually, they're the same. They're human beings that have their own things going on, but they just present themselves as the best version of themselves. 100%. Of course. And I think that is an important thing to mention.
100%. All right, Joe, you ready? We're going to swap out Joe.
I've never done a podcast like this before. This is nice.
I'm going to take this. I'm going to sit that.
Yeah. Go for it. Yeah.
It's a beautiful conversation. I was almost wanting to just keep listening. I was enjoying it so much. Yeah, I resonated with a lot of what you said, a lot of what Harri said. Something I want to get your opinion on, because I think you're going to have an interesting perspective on it, is this idea of being seen, like being fully seen. And for me, the biggest human fear is not death or annihilation. It's actually rejection. It's like the idea, Jerry Seinfeld made the joke, most humans, they'd rather be in the casket than giving the eulogy. Because if you're giving the eulogy, you're putting yourself out there. You could be rejected by the tribe or by other human beings. Being in a situation, being on reality TV, that's a situation that a lot of people would say, yeah, I'd love to do that. But in reality, very few people actually would put themselves in that position to be seen at that level. I'm curious to know, like, going into it, was it kind of like ignorance is bliss and you just went in there and did it? Or was that something that you really wrestled with, that scared you, either like prior or during?
Yeah, great question. My experience with reality TV was predominantly positive, fun. Like when you find out you're going on Love Island, until the day you leave the villa, it's pretty much all fun and games. Like
thinking you're like the letter from Hogwarts you get.
Right, like you find out you're going to go in, you get given your date, They come and pick you up from your house. They take you to this like secret location. You then go out to Mallorca where we filmed it, and you spend a bit of time like in lockdown where like you're not on your phone. There's all this anticipation, there's all this excitement, and you know that in a matter of days you're going to go into this villa and have a holiday for a few weeks with potentially like friends, potentially even a partner. And it's pretty much all excitement. Yes, there's nerves. Yes, there's a little bit of anxiety. But for me, it was pretty much all excitement and all positive. The hardship and challenge and struggle and bits people don't see that are difficult only came after I left the villa, because that's when you meet reality for the first time. Like don't forget, like you're in complete lockdown. You're cut off from the world. So you go into that experience with a certain understanding of how the world works. Like I have this set of rules about what the world is and how it works and how I function within that understanding. And then you go into the villa and then you operate with a bunch of strangers in that same kind of understanding. It's only when you leave does all of that get shattered. And all of that is just, it's like a giant Jenga board that just crushes down to the floor, and you have to put it together piece by piece again. And for me, actually, the experience itself was really fun. We had loads of fun. Like most of the time you're in there, you're just like chilling, playing games, like laughing and joking. There's no internet, there's no phones, like there's no social media. Like you're just like a kid again, swimming in the pool. Like there's a scene of like me and the boys that I became good friends with, where like we're reenacting scenes from Harry Potter because we all love Harry Potter. Like you wouldn't do that now in 2024. Like we'd all be on our phone on social media, or we'd all be working, or whatever it may be. Like it really forces you to go back to your inner child and just sort of have fun and not really care that much, to be completely honest. Yeah. The difficulty came for me when you are brought back to reality, and then you sit down with the team afterwards, and before you even get your phone back, you have a debrief with the producers, and they tell you all of the stories that have been written about you in the newspapers whilst you've been in the villa. That's like the first experience you get. It's like, right, before all the fun and games start, we need to have a chat. Right, and they just go through one by one. This person came out and sold this story about you. Do you know this girl from 2006? Yeah, I went to primary school with her. Why? Yeah, she sold a story about you. Do you know this boy? Never heard of him in his life. Yeah, he apparently said that, da-da-da-da-da. And it's just like one after the other, after the other, after the other. And you're like, wait, what? Like, no way. And just whole reality shattered. And then it's like, right, here's your phone back. Go have fun. Bye. 500,000, 600,000, 700,000 followers. Oh, what do I do? Like, you just like, again, I use this like washing machine analogy. It's kind of like you put in a washing machine, press spin, spit you out. And then you're just like dizzy. Like, okay, how do I figure out what I'm supposed to do here? Some people come out of that show less dizzier than others. Like, it was kind of my experience. So yeah, I'm not sure if that answers your question.
Yeah, it gives me insight for sure. Something I find it's kind of funny, it's interesting, is that you went on reality TV and that actually brought you in contact with reality. Like that was the thing that actually,
irony,
yeah, it's like cosmic giggle. Because I'm the bad cop in this situation. Most people, in my opinion, the people watching reality TV, they're doing it to escape reality. Like they're actually living unfulfilled lives, and then they're living vicariously through these people that, they want to be like on some level. It was great. Well, like it was evolutionary for you. Obviously, it had its challenges and it had its blessings as well. What's your opinion on reality TV in general, like as a concept?
Yeah, it's a big question, right? So I don't think anything is inherently good or bad. I think how we perceive it determines how it actually is, right? And we can choose to sit here and be like, reality TV's bad. It's like, I have every right to sit here and say it's bad, but I'm not going to say that. What I will say, and I'll lend myself to what you just said there about the types of people who watch it. And I think it's important we talk about that for a sec. So Love Island, like all reality TV shows, they operate within the entertainment industry, which is an industry which needs to make money, first and foremost. How does it make money? By getting people to watch the damn thing. The more people watch it, the more money it makes. the more it can invest, the more it can make more money for the people who run the industry. That's how it works. Every business model works the same way. The way it gets more people to watch the show is by giving it or filling it with more of what they think the people want to see. So the TV show itself isn't inherently bad. We can sit here and slag off the TV show. It is just giving us, as a nation or as a population, what they think we actually want to see. And the fact that we're all tuning in to watch it confirms that,
it's
right?
like that mirror concept you guys are speaking
about. Of
right?
course. And I think, like confirmation bias is a huge thing, right? We're all guilty of it to some extent. And I think a lot of people who watch reality TV, yes, there's escapism going on there. I think a lot of it is confirmation bias. They have a lot of beliefs about themselves and about the world, and they're looking to confirm that within the things that they're exposing themselves to. TV being one of them things. I'm not good enough. I'm not beautiful enough. I'm not muscly enough. And they go and watch reality TV to confirm those beliefs. And they do it subconsciously, of course, but that's why TV shows are so successful, because generally speaking, a lot of people have these beliefs about themselves. Yeah. And that is what I think is sad. That is what I think needs to change. How can we change the health of people so that Love Island isn't such an attractive escapism route? But it works so well because so many of us are so insecure. That's why it's so successful.
Yeah.
But ask anybody who has really strong relationships, a really successful career, a good, whatever good means, understanding of how the world works, and then ask them to watch an episode of Love Island. They will be bored shitless. They will think, well, what's the point? I don't understand. Why are we so, like... And again, that might trigger some people, but it's just, in my opinion, it's just, that's the way I see it. That's the truth. And before I experienced reality TV, I also used to watch TV shows like Geordie Shore, like the previous Love Island. And it served a purpose for me then. It was a solution to a problem that I had in my life at that time. So I'm speaking from also personal experience. I'm not sat on this like mountain saying I'm better than everybody else. Until you understand that for yourself, ask yourself, why are you watching it?
Yeah.
Like, why are you actually watching it? And maybe it's not what I just described there. Maybe it's so that you have something to talk about at work because everybody else watches it. And that means that what you really want is social connection. Maybe you want to fit into your social group. Maybe it's something else. But you're not watching it because you actually enjoy it. Yeah. You're not sat there giggling away, haha, I love this guy and I love that girl. No, it's triggering things in you. Every 5 seconds you're triggered by something. That's why people tweet all day long about it. That's why people share stuff on their stories. Like, I hate him. Can't believe she said that. I would never. Da-da-da-da-da. Because it's triggering for people. But to bring it back to how I started this kind of point, it's like, that's what gets more people to watch it. The people at the top make more money, and that's how business and life works. Is that inherently good or bad? I'm not here to say. It just is.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great answer. It's a very well balanced answer. And it's true. It's like the market decides if something has value.
Of course.
We can cast judgment on it. And then that's also, I think, like what you and Harri were talking about, like the spiritual ego or the personal development ego. Yeah, I fell into that massively. It's like I, quote unquote, woke up, and then you start casting judgment on people for watching reality TV, saying like they shouldn't be doing this. But then that's probably worse. That's more ego than the person who's just like, I just like watching Love Island.
Something I've been thinking about a lot, and I've said it a few times in this conversation. Like, we're all just problem-solving beings. That's all we are. We're just people trying to solve problems, and our behaviors sort of are indicative of the problems we're trying to solve, whether it's filming a podcast, whether it's writing a book, whether it's getting high with your friends, whether it's sitting in a bar and drinking till 3 a.m., whether it's sitting in front of the TV and watching reality TV. We're all just trying to solve problems within ourselves, whether it's like reconcile these internal spiritual battles, whether it's trying to fill these voids, whether it's actually trying to help people with social media content, whatever the problem is. We're just humans. That's how we're built. We just try and problem solve, be it for ourselves selfishly or whether it be on a communal, social level. And I try not to see it as like good or bad.
Of course.
It's funny, me and my partner, we had a conversation quite early in our relationship about drugs and alcohol. And she's very much of the stance of like, the conversation, she came from the stance of like, some people need to just maybe be a bit stronger. Alcohol is bad. People who sit and take drugs are bad. And I completely understand her side of the conversation, like, because it can be like this selfish thing. It can be this thing which negatively impacts people around them. It can wind you in debt. There's loads of negatives associated to some of these behaviors, right? And then I was coming from the standpoint of like, I understand that these things are bad. Also, caveat, this person has a huge wound inside of them, and this toxic behavior actually helps them problem solve that particular wound, irrespective of how it impacts everybody else. And it's like, yes, it's a fucking awful thing. Like, again, sat here, someone who was on his way to a drinking problem, recreational drugs, all of the bloody time. And I understand intuitively and logically how problematic that is. Caveat, it served a really good purpose for me because I was in so much pain. And it helped me navigate that, you know? So I just think there's no like, this is good, that's bad. He's right, she's wrong. I think some things in life are simpler than they come across. A lot of things in life are a lot more complicated and a lot more nuanced. Yeah. And I think we like to pretend that they are.
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard intelligence be described as the amount of nuance you can see in any topic. So you can thinking in terms of good and bad, that's like a polarized way of thinking. It's black or it's white, you know, good or bad, failure or loss. So then the more intelligent person is able to see all the shades in between. Like someone who has experience with wine, you know, they can taste all the notes, whereas me, it's like red wine or it's white wine. And I think that's like the progression in life. You go from seeing things as like, okay, that person's bad, or like this thing is bad, or this person's the best. That's a polarized way of thinking. And what you're speaking to, that's actually the way out of your perceived problems. Because when you're telling yourself, let's just say it's like a personal thing. Oh, it's so bad that I do this thing. That creates all this shame and guilt inside of you. And then that shame and guilt is actually the thing that perpetuates the entire cycle. So getting to the point where it's, you know, the Buddha in the first two noble truths, he said, life is suffering, as in like the default state of the mind is to be in suffering. And the cause of suffering is preference. So it's actually the fact that, is it a problem that you drink? No, inherently that's not a problem, because someone else can have a drink and it can be a stress relieving thing and it helps them connect with other people. It's the fact that you cast judgment or preference on the thing as being bad, not recognizing that it's solving a problem for you. It might create other problems, you know, so maybe it's not the best strategy, but for where you're at, that's what you need to evolve. Yeah.
100%, totally. There's no, you know, there's no perfect solution to any problem. I think everything comes with its associated costs and trade-offs, right? So like for someone who's, this isn't me, but like for someone, I'm imagining like a homeless person whose mind is just a storm, tormented by trauma their whole life. Maybe there's abuse and all this kind of stuff. For someone like that, like sitting on the side of the street and drinking is the best solution to their problem that they can perceive, given their current circumstances. If you give that same solution, quote unquote, to somebody else without those circumstances, it becomes like, why would that person do that? Yeah. And it's just an inappropriate response, right? And again, like, I think it's important to have nuanced conversations. I think it's important to, we live in this age now where everything's like clickbaity, 5-second, like, what side of this, you know, are you left or are you right? Yeah. You know, like, you know, do you believe Trump or not? Like, and there's, it's a slippery slope, really. If that's the way that the world is going, where everything is polarized and there's no room for nuance, God, like the number of, like, there's a whole cascade of negative implications there. That's not even just incomprehensible. It's crazy. Before, I just want to mention as well, like, before I come across like this, you mentioned a minute ago, like, intelligence is the capacity for nuance in the way that you understand a topic or something, right? I also think it's important to recognize, I think there's an optimal amount of nuance. I think that you can overanalyze. I think there's also like there's like this critical mass, right? Where it's like, if you, I can see the nuance in something, and you could overanalyze it and overcomplicate something to the point where it becomes redundant, like becomes problematic, like you've investigated something, right?
Massively.
And I think it's important to just touch on that for a sec before I like portray myself as this, like, I see the nuance and everything, and it's all just hunky dory. That can also be the root of torment.
Absolutely.
You know, like, you know, my girlfriend said to me the other day, we was having a conversation about empathy, and there's actually something called toxic empathy, where if you can understand someone's situation so much to the point where you actually don't recognize the things which they're doing which are unhealthy, or they may be hurting you, or they may be doing something which is inappropriate, but because you have so much empathy, you just overlook.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, oh no, I understand why he does that. I understand why she's like this. And you actually accept things which are just unacceptable. And it's like, there's like, empathy is great. We all want empathy. But to some degree, maybe there's too much empathy. And I think it's similar with the nuance thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's like such a great little rabbit hole to go down. There's this term that's come out now called suicidal empathy. And it's quite a polarizing idea. It was actually, the first time I heard it was in relation to like the UK's immigration policy. And it's like, people are so tolerant. And it's like, yeah, everyone come in, to the point of like, it's hurting the country, like of this person's perspective. So yeah, it's interesting idea. Like intelligence could be, knowing how to analyze. And then the difference between intelligence and wisdom is like knowing when to stop doing that, knowing when to stop thinking. Like with the example of the wine, for example. I mean, I fall into this trap. It's probably coming from ego. I do consider myself to have an intelligent mind. Like I'm really analytical. So I'm like the person, instead of just enjoying the wine, wisdom, I'm like analyzing all like the little things of the wine, and I'm no longer drinking wine.
Yeah.
Like
it becomes a point where it's problematic, right?
Yeah.
It's like if I'm like, what's this table made of? You might say marble, you might say something else. If you started saying, well, it's made up of atoms and it's made up of this, bonds between this and hydrogen and blah, 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 I'd be like, what?
Exactly.
Like, it just becomes nonsensical. It becomes this like reductive thing. Like we don't need to go that deep.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And I think there's a critical mass. There's an element where it's like, okay, I think this is and I am still figuring that bit out, by the way. You've probably got to the point now where, this guy's a bit of a deep thinker. I do think about things quite a lot. Sometimes that's also a problem.
Oh, yeah.
That comes with its own trade-offs. Comes with its own associated costs. You know, I thought it was just worth mentioning that before I...
Absolutely.
I'm this like all-knowing, intelligent guy, because it's still a problem.
Oh, man.
Yeah, thinking too much is a problem.
I've been in got myself into some dark fucking black holes just thinking.
Yeah, just rabbit holes.
Yeah. It's like this great quote I really like. It's like, life is not a problem to be solved, it's an experience to be lived. And that is something that really grounds me and centers me, because mind exists to solve problems, like you said. And life's a mirror. So if you want to see life as a problem, you've got an infinite amount of problems to solve. And you'll solve the next problem, and then 2 more will take its place. You'll solve those 2, and then you'll get 4, right? Yeah. So if you want to see life as a problem, congratulations, like you got problems for life. But then if you just see it as an experience, and that's actually, to go back, you guys talking about reality. To me, presence is seeing reality as it is instead of your thoughts about reality. And that's really the difference. Like real wisdom, real presence, the optimal life experience is just, man, it's not even a problem.
Just noticing.
It's just an experience. Like Alan Watts said it really well. It's like, okay, most people think of life as like a race, and there's an end point, and you got to beat these other people, and there's a lot of stress. He's like, really, it's like a dance. It's like when you're dancing, the point of the dance is not to get to the end of the song. It's just to enjoy the dance, right?
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I think in today's day and age, more than ever, we're like information processing machines, aren't we? Like we process faster than we've ever processed. We work harder than we've ever worked, potentially. we get more done. We're like productivity gurus, we're self-development maniacs. But if the only advantage we get by living a life which is oriented around productivity is more problems to solve, then we never get to reap the rewards of our efforts. We never get to enjoy the fruits of the labor, right? If all we're doing is optimizing for problem solving, and the only reward we get is more problems to solve, then what's the bloody point?
Yeah.
Like, we're just problem solving at a faster rate.
Yes.
We're just processing information faster. If we never stop to smell the roses and enjoy a bit of presence, like you just said, stop to enjoy the dance, listen to the music, then it makes no difference whether you're problem solving at a slower rate or a faster rate if you're always in the state of problem solving, right? How many times can you say problem solving in a sentence? Bloody hell.
Hammer it home.
Yeah. It's like, so yeah, I think it's crucial. It's difficult in a place like Dubai. Everyone's busy, everyone's working hard, everyone's building businesses and all that stuff. And I think it's easy for that to become your default mode.
Yeah.
Where it's just, right, problem solve. Let's get to work. Let's be more productive. Let's be more efficient. Let's optimize this. Everything's optimized, right?
Yeah.
And for good reason. But if there is never a break, if never a pause, never a like, let's have a day off and stop and just realize what we're building here. Enjoy this conversation. Enjoy this cup of coffee or glass of wine or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Then really, like, what is the point? I can't think of a point.
No, there is no point. That's the idea. You miss your whole life. You do that because you're always living for the future moment. Life is now. It happens now. You can't take action in your past. You can't take action in your future. You'll never be in your future. So if you're ever going to enjoy it, you have to start now. And I know people, like, you've heard this before, but I'm inviting you to listen. Like, that is it. Like, if you get that, then, like, all problems cease to exist because problems only exist in relation to them. You have a problem if you think you do, regardless of the situation. And at this point, I know for me, when I first kind of realized this, and I went into a bit of a state of nihilism, so it's like, okay, I won't achieve any goals. There's no point of going after anything. And the insight that really helped me is that desire, which comes from a place of fullness, that's healthy. Like, that's really why we're here. Like, the meaning of life is to make meaning of life. Like, you get to create whatever meaning you want from it. Like an artist gets to paint. They don't have to paint, but they get to because they love it. So desire is healthy, but the thing in terms of like turning life into a problem and stressing yourself out and never being present, that comes from craving. Like, that comes from a place of emptiness. So you've got this hole inside you and you're trying to fill it with something that it just can't be filled from that. So yeah, because that for me, like when you hear about these kind of ideas, the next thing is like, oh, so what do? I want to like live life. It's like, yeah, do it from a place of fullness, realizing that your whole as it is, you know, if it's coming from a place of emptiness, that's also fine because...
How do we, I'd love to go deeper here. How do we help somebody who for their whole life has delayed their own happiness, who has kicked the can down the road because I will be happy when I get this. I will feel confident when I arrive here. Once I just get that many zeros in my bank account, then I will stop and breathe. Yeah. Because it's easy to sit here and just like fucking virtue signal, right? Like, because I still suffer with it sometimes. I still like I get so caught up in the doing that you forget to stop and breathe and be present, right? Like, what would you say to somebody who wrestles with that? Yeah. Like, because it sounds great. Like, all we have now is the present moment. All we can do, like, and again, like you probably read The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle. Again, brilliant book. Speaking to what you've just described there, we only have the present moment. Like, it's literally all we have. We don't even. We spend all of our time stressing about the past or worrying about the future, but it's irrelevant because all we actually have is this present moment here right now. So what are we doing stressing, right? All that sounds great, yet I'm still stressed about the future. I still have anxiety. What do I do? Yeah.
So the shift for me is that when you hear about presence and you think, okay, I need to do presence. Like even in what you said, we have the present moment. We don't have the present moment. We are the present moment. We're inseparable from it. So like we don't have time, we are time. And so there's actually, my beliefs are quite different. It's like I do believe everyone is exactly where they're supposed to be. So there's nothing you can do. It's actually just a relaxing. It's like kind of like, you know, if I'm just looking at you, my eyes are relaxed, I can see clearly. If I'm like, I want to see clearly, and I really like squint, and then I can't see you anymore. So this is like, again, coming at the personal development to the personal dissolvement from a different angle. It's like, you're actually already there. Like, enlightenment is present. It's present now. That's what the Buddha said when he sat under the Bodhi tree. He's enlightened. People ask him, what's it like? He said, I didn't gain anything. He just stopped adding stuff on top of reality. So it's like, it's already there. Like the thing you're looking for is the place you're looking from. And people need to, people need, you know, it's exactly like your life is the answer, actually. Like your journey is the answer. Jim Carrey said it really well. He said, like, I hope everyone gets rich and famous, achieves their wildest dreams, so they can fully understand that it's actually not the thing that you want. So the thing is, like, for me, you can't make a mistake. If you feel like you need to get a bunch of followers and make a bunch of money, you need to do that. If you feel like you want to go live in a cave, then that's what you need to do. Like, I'm of the opinion, like, the universe doesn't make mistakes. We're all, like, exactly where we need to be. We all are like apples on the tree that ripen at different speeds. There's nothing you can do to speed up an apple ripening it, you know? It's like it just drops off when it's ready. And if you try and pull it off prematurely, it doesn't work. It leaves a sour taste in the mouth.
So, I mean, I love everything you've just said there. When you're going through that nihilistic period that you just described, what was that transition? And I'm aware you're trying to podcast me, not the other way around, but I'm just curious, like, what was that transition like when you started to reallocate meaning to your life?
Yes.
Because the way we just described that period, it sounded like a penny drop moment. It sounded like I only have the present moment. And then everything just kind of figured itself out. I am very aware that I've had those moments before where I've maybe even convinced myself, definitely convinced other people, that I had these like penny drop moments and then life was so different after it. But in reality, there was actually like transitional periods and they may have lasted weeks and months. And those periods were really quite hard to navigate. Like helplessness and nihilism definitely can relate to that. Like, what's the point then? If I'm not going to chase status, money, and all those things, like, genuinely, what's the point? Like, if nothing matters and I've only got the present moment, then maybe the only right thing to do is just chase my impulses. That's a legitimate theory, right? If all we've got is the present moment and everyone says, just be happy, why don't I just do what makes me happy all the time? You're like, how? Like, that's a difficult place to navigate, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm curious to know how you navigated that.
Yeah. For me, the turning point was, because at first I was living in like, I need to be successful. Like, I need to reach my goals or else. Because when you think you're separate from life, that's an existential fear. So like you're fighting life and you're like, okay, I need to do these things or else something bad's going to happen. And then I came to the realization that, okay, I didn't like come into the world. I came out of it. Like a tree grows out of the earth. Like I'm part of it, you know, so I'm not separate. So if I'm not separate, there's nothing I need to do. I don't need to be successful. I don't need to be doing this podcast. I don't need to even be healthy. I literally don't even need to like drink water. There's nothing I need to do. So when I was in that point, I was like, because all I knew was to live out of fear. So I no longer had that fuel source. So I'm like, I'm fucking out of gas now.
So dude, this is why I'm asking these questions. Like, so for me, it sounds great to be here now and speak the way that I'm speaking, and it kind of comes across like I've got certain things figured out. However, I consciously recognized that my life up until that point was completely based off of motivations and desires which I no longer wanted to give power to. Validation, status, money, whatever, physical appearance, all these things. I wish I had a penny drop moment where all of a sudden I just got to change motivations and all of a sudden be driven by a bunch of more healthy things, less toxic things. But my experience was that I went through a real strange period.
Yeah, dark night of the soul.
Well, if I'm not driven to get accepted by people, what does drive me?
Yeah.
And I want to sit here and say that I'm driven to like help people, but right now I'm not. I want to sit here and say like I'm driven to impact the world, but truthfully I'm not. I want to sit here and say like I'm driven to be this like saint of a person and leave my mark and maybe build something that creates a legacy and all these things that sound great, and everyone says this on podcasts, right? Have all these altruistic goals. But the reality is, at least in that transition period of my life, when I first let go of a lot of those motivations, or at least decided I didn't want them to have power over me anymore, I didn't know how to navigate that. I didn't know how to reallocate my energy and set new anchors and set new, we spoke up with Harri before about having like an overarching goal that when things got a bit confusing or some kind of low-hanging fruit seemed attractive, he reminded himself of that overarching thing which kept him going. When your overarching desires or overarching motivations have been predetermined, shall we say, and you no longer want to give them power, it's a difficult thing to navigate. It's like, well, what does drive me then? Like where does my motivation come from? I'll tell you what, when I was driven to be accepted by other people, I was the hardest worker in the room. I would have gone to any length to be accepted, to be validated, for people to think I'm cool. Right? I would have gone to any length. I'd have worked so hard to work on myself and to do all this altruistic shit and for to do stuff out of the goodness of my heart. I was working half as hard. Because my motivation wasn't the same. And that's why I sort of was curious to know your experience of that, because I found that really hard to navigate. And I had to go like many, many layers deeper to get to a point now where my motivation is somewhat comparable to what it was many years ago. And that maybe doesn't make me sound like a great person, but that's just the truth.
No, that's honesty.
Yeah, that's just the truth.
Yeah, and that's great. Because that's what so few people can actually admit that. Everyone's like, yeah, I want to leave a legacy. I want to make all this money. I'm going to donate it all to charity. But it's just lip service. It's not actually real. So yeah, what you're describing, like that's the dark night of the soul. That's when you go from, you realize you've been living just conditioning. You've probably never had a thought that's your own, and all your desires are your parents or society's, and you're trying to figure out the right mask, the right character to play to get acceptance because you haven't accepted or loved yourself yet. And then you go into this point, okay, like, what are my goals? And it actually reminds me of something you said at the start of the podcast, like, not knowing is great. Because we're so conditioned to, like, the mind, if there's any uncertainty, it'll just jump in and try and predict and plan or retreat back to what it knows. Because at least what you did up until now, you didn't die. At least it helped you survive. Like the difference between, like, music and noise, it's the space between the notes. So if there's no space between the notes, you can't actually hear the music. So sometimes in life, like, the thing to do is actually just relax into the not knowing and just wait for the next thing to emerge. Like kind of what I said before, like you can't really rush the process. And eventually the speed at which you get through that process is surrender. That's the bridge between point A and point B. Because in point A, it's all about doing. It's like, I'm going to take responsibility. I'm going to do all this stuff, which is amazing. That's exactly what you need in that point. But then what got you there won't get you to the next level. And that's just more about surrendering. And then the shift for me was, okay. And it was like I didn't have, like, I wish I did, just, the voice of God come in and then I'm fine.
I had a dream and somebody came to me and said, if you keep walking down this path, it ends badly. Therefore, walk down this new path.
Yes.
And I woke up enlightened.
Yeah. Well, that's low key. Like, people kind of like movies have conditioned us to think that that's possible. That's also victim, because you're wanting to be saved. And that's the actual bridge, is like, look, is there a meaning to life in the same way that there's like an answer to a math problem? No. The meaning of life is that you get to make the meaning. You get to create it. So that's actually what helped me get through, is like, okay, I don't need to do anything. I don't need to be successful in business. I don't need to do a podcast. But like, fuck, I get to. Like, and how cool is that? Because before I was actually looking at it the same thing of like, okay, if I don't need to do anything, why do anything at all? Because you get to. Because like, you're here and that's what's been put in front of you. So like, what a waste not to. So then it comes out of love instead of fear. And that actually, we've also been conditioned to think, okay, fear is the only energy source to like get anything done. We don't say it's fear, but we call it hustle, or we call it fucking grind or something like that. And then, you know, when people start talking about acting from love, they think they're a pussy most of the time, right? They think it's like, that's weak. Like, it's a dog eat dog world. You're going to get eaten alive out there. And it's not, I mean, that's the lie. It's just a straight up lie. But it does take some time to just like get to that point. And to be clear, I don't spend all my time in that state. So I get stressed, I forget. But it's not trying to get to a different place. It's realizing like, man, I'm already there. It's just reminding myself of like, okay, this isn't me. Take the mask off, relax, you know, connect to what I truly am, and then act from that place.
Yeah, I love that.
Okay. What's, you guys were talking about previous mountains you've climbed. A lot of what we've talked about has been like looking into the past, your past. What's the next mountain that you're looking to climb in your life?
Yeah, many mountains. There's a lot of things I want to do. And me and Harri were speaking, I think, before we started recording about this idea that we want to have everything right now. We want to achieve all of it all at the same time. And it took me until relatively recently to understand that that's just never going to happen. And there's a lot of stuff online about work-life balance. I hear a lot of people speak about work-life balance. I think that's where a lot of the atomic habits, daily productivity routines, kind of conversations kind of optimize for. So how can we achieve more work-life balance? And actually, maybe some people won't agree with this, but what I've started to accept is I think balance is achieved in the macro. I don't think it's achieved in the day-to-day. I actually want to live a relatively extreme lifestyle and periodize the things that I'm working towards. And on my deathbed, I will say I've had a balanced life.
Yeah.
I don't really want to feel like my day-to-day is super balanced. Although it's something that I always strived for. And I was like, God, I don't feel balanced. I don't feel like I'm recovering enough. I don't feel like I'm working hard enough. I don't feel like I'm building a business fast enough. I wanted all this balance. And everything was like a 3 out of 10. My relationships, my self-narration and self-development, my work, my working out, my training, my recovery. Yeah. Everything was like a 3 or 4 out of 10 because I was trying to do everything all of the time.
Yes.
And when you ask, like, what kind of mountains are you trying to climb? Like, I still want to climb all those mountains. I want to build a really healthy relationship with my partner. I want to travel so much more of the world. I want to build a great business. I want to help a lot of people with what I do with my work, because I think that's also important for my own. Selfishly, I think helping people through your work is a really powerful way to build your own self-identity and self-worth. Let's just say. There's loads of things I want to do. Right now, what I'm working on, so I've been a model for almost 10 years, and in the last 9 to 12 months, I've been working with young and aspiring models, breaking into the industry, navigate those first few months, first few years, getting signed, booking more jobs, not getting exploited by dodgy people on the internet, all those types of things. I used to think that modeling was a relatively easy space to navigate because I found it relatively easy to navigate. I picked up the skills pretty quickly. I was very lucky. I got scouted in the street, signed with a big London agency, started working at all my favorite brands pretty much straight away. And I didn't really realize that that's pretty uncommon until I moved here. Until I moved to Dubai and realized that so many people are struggling with a bunch of problems that I actually have the answer to. And I didn't even realize that these were solutions people were looking for until I moved here. So one mountain I'm climbing at the moment is I released like this like do-it-yourself program thing last year. And it was like, here's how to go from A to B as a model. If you're trying to make it as a model, here's how to pose, here's how to build a portfolio, here's how to look after your body without sacrificing all of your, your genuine health markers that you need, because that's what a lot of people do. They give up their recovery and sleep and they restrict themselves just to look a certain way, and actually you don't need to do that. Here's how to get signed with an agency, all those types of things. And I made a program and I put it online and people bought it. People was like, wow, I needed this. This helps a lot. Thanks so much. I had a guy that did the program and then he went and signed with a massive agency in America. I'm working with somebody in Australia, working with people all over the world, people here in the UAE. I started hosting like free workshops so people could come online and I would just chat through a certain subject that I thought people needed help with. And it just kind of snowballed into this thing where now I've got a group of models that I work with on a weekly and monthly basis. That is something I'm kind of evolving at the moment. But as I said to Harri before, it's something I'm still figuring out, something I'm still testing. Something you hear in business a lot is if you don't know what you want to do in business, think about the person you were 5 years ago.
I was just about to say that.
Right. This is something you hear a lot. And that sounds great. But as we've discussed in this conversation, I didn't really know who I was 5 years ago. I struggled with a lot of those types of things 5 years ago. So I found myself in this space where I was trying to be a personal trainer, trying to be an online coach, trying to do random speaking gigs, trying to help people. I'm trying to help me 5 years ago, but I didn't understand myself 5 years ago. So I'm just like spinning around, going left, right, up, down, not really knowing what I'm doing. And there's this disconnect. There's this, what do you call it, cognitive dissonance? Like it's like help who you were 5 years ago, solve the problems you needed solving. But I was yet to break down my own story and really get to grips with the problems that I needed solving myself. And again, this is the whole acceptance piece, the whole self-discovery thing. It was crucial. And it's interesting because if you asked me like 2 or 3 years ago, do you think you'll end up making a business around coaching models? I would have said, hell no. That's not a part of my story. Like, why would I coach models? It's not a part of who I am. It's not a part of what I've been through. Yeah, I do modeling, but it's not a big deal. Now, because I've let go of a lot of that, you might even say shame and guilt. I was kind of embarrassed to be a model, weirdly. I attached a lot of embarrassment to being a model because I didn't associate it with hard work. I never felt like I earned it. I got scouted in the street. So I didn't exactly like strive to become one and then get it after years of studying or something. I just became it. So I never felt proud, really, to be a model. So to then start a business around it, I never would have thought I'd do that. But only through acceptance of that story of like, oh no, actually, I have done this for like 10 years. I do know quite a lot. I have worked in Italy, America, Australia, the UK, now here in Dubai. I know how different markets work. I've worked with a bunch of different agencies. I actually do have a lot of valuable insight that could help people who don't have that insight.
Absolutely.
That's not arrogance. That's just a fact, right? So only now do I feel comfortable enough to like help other people with it. So that's one mountain. I think another mountain is the continuation of this self-discovery. Again, like, I am by no means perfect. No, by no means. And the older I get, it's like this Pandora's box thing, right? Like the deeper you go into the box, you realize the box is even bigger than you first thought. And I've had a series of, let's just say, family-related issues where like I don't speak to certain people in my family anymore for a various number of reasons. And one mountain I want to climb is building my own family. Like that's a mountain for somebody like me who had a background like I had, who had a childhood like I had, to then start my own family in another country with the woman that I love. That's a mountain I'm really wanting to climb in the near future. It's funny, like when you say like what mountains are you trying to climb, you immediately think of like the status things. You immediately think of like, oh, what would be nice? Like, what's my dream car? Like, where would I like to live maybe in 3 years? Or what would I like to be known for or recognized because I achieved? And like I'm running a half marathon in a few months. Like that's for me a mountain. Like I'm not ready to run a half marathon yet. I will be if I put in the work, but for me that's a mountain. But initially, like when you say what mountains are you trying to climb, something I said in a YouTube video, I started posting on YouTube, there's another mountain I'm trying to climb, YouTube, goodness gracious. Something I said in a recent YouTube video was, if you're ever struggling because you don't know what to do, ask yourself what needs to happen right now for you to be most proud of yourself. And that should give you some clarity as to what you need to do. Yeah. So when you're struggling with hardship, when you're trying to achieve something and it's not working out, something doesn't feel right, and you don't know what direction to go, ask yourself what needs to happen in this moment for you to come away from it feeling proud of yourself. And that will give you, like, your intuition will be like, oh, you need to go and do that.
Yeah.
And I've found myself doing that more and more the last few months, especially. And it's giving me more clarity over what I need to do, what mountains I want to climb, than maybe ever before. I didn't used to ask myself those kinds of questions.
Yeah.
It used to be just the subconscious, like, what gives me the most status? Like, how can I get the most likes on an Instagram post? How can people think I'm cool? How can, sometimes it's even things which genuinely make you look altruistic, genuinely make you look like you're full of empathy and whatever else. And actually, like I said before, it kind of exacerbates the problem.
Yeah.
So yeah, to give you the short answer, mountains I'm trying to climb, the things which make me really proud of myself.
Yeah, that's such a good question. And it reminds me of Edmund Hillary. So he was one of the first people, him and Tenzing Norgay, first people to summit Everest. And then he has this quote, it's not the mountain that you conquer, but yourself. And that's really the difference that you're speaking about in terms of like, okay, what's the mountain I'm going to climb? Like, what can I get? That question reorients yourself to like, okay, who do I need to be? Like, who can I be now? Yeah. And then you'll have the things.
This is the beautiful thing about setting goals, right? And this is why chasing other people's goals is so pointless. And it's such a futile, unfulfilling experiment. Let me just go and put myself through a load of shit to achieve a goal which has nothing to do with me. What a waste of time.
It's like that quote, like doing things to impress people, or like buying things we don't need to impress people we don't like with money we don't have. Some people do have the money, but they still don't have 2 out of 3. And it just leads to this vicious cycle downwards.
Yeah, it's fascinating how it's like our default to do that.
Yeah.
What's really interesting, and this is what makes life really fun now, is I'm now chasing things which really matter to me. And when you get to that point, when you do let go of some of those things which aren't really to do with you, but they're to do with like your mum, or to do with like that kid who picked on you at school, or they're to do with like societal pressures or whatever it may be, when you do let go of some of those things and you start to actually zero in on what matters to you, like people are always asking, like, how do I stop comparing myself to people? How do I stop caring what the people think? And I think it's more an act of focusing more on what you want to do will make those things just drop off as a byproduct than it is you having to like consciously like, I need to stop thinking about what other people think of me. I need to let go of that judgment, and like, just get so busy with shit which matters to you, and you literally just won't have the room in your brain anymore. Like, at least that's been my experience anyway. Like, I don't really like, and who knows what goes on in my subconscious mind? Maybe it does. I don't really consciously think about a lot of the things which used to cause me a lot of stress anymore. And I think it's hugely proportional to the fact that I spend most of my time thinking and acting in alignment with the things which genuinely matter to me. And I didn't used to do that.
Absolutely. That's this idea in terms of purpose. Like, a lot of people, it's like, I need to hit rock bottom so then I can change. Well, if you have a goal and a vision that's inspiring enough, you don't need the crisis. It's only when you don't have the clarity and the vision and the thing that's pulling you forward that then you can only act out of pain from that point.
Well, very few of us are actually looking. I think that's something I realized about myself, is that, maybe this is the victim mentality, wanting to be saved, giving the power to someone or something else. I will change when. I will sort my shit out if it's her fault, it's his fault, my childhood, black kid in a white council estate, all of these things which are against me, like not knowing my dad, like things with my mum, like abuse, and seeing things with my siblings which no one ever needs to see. Like, I could use all of that as like, this is why I am not where I need to be. For all of those reasons, this is why I'm struggling. And again, all of those things are warranted. Like, I'm not saying I shouldn't ever struggle. But you have to get to a point where you, despite what you've been through, accept full responsibility for your life. Whether it's fair or not, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
your success doesn't care whether it's fair or not. Some people just like get lucky on crypto and become billionaires, and they just live a great old life. Is that fair? There isn't. I think we have this misconception.
Yeah, fair is a human concept.
Yeah, we just invented this thing.
Yeah,
fairness. Nature doesn't care about fair.
There's no fair in nature.
Is it fair that a tsunami just wipes out an entire village in Thailand? No, it's not fair. But nature doesn't care.
No,
like it just is.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And I would say the same with myself and my own life. I justified my inaction because I convinced myself I had worthy reason to not act and to not work towards a new goal, to not change my trajectory, to not seek a higher purpose or whatever you want to call it. Because I had a bunch of valid reasons.
Yes.
I had a bunch of things I struggled with.
Yeah.
Who doesn't, by the way? And there's a certain level of I would call it acceptance. You look yourself in the mirror and say, I know none of this is fair, and I'm going to work towards something better anyway.
Yeah, that's the choice. Yeah. I think a lot of times, most people, when they hear the word responsibility, they equate it with fault. So, yeah, I don't think, it may not be your fault. Maybe you get into a car crash or, your child passes away from cancer or something. Yeah, like that's not your fault. But you either take responsibility, as in you acknowledge the fact that you have the ability to respond to 100% of your life, or you are playing the role of a victim. So it's not your fault, but everything in life is your responsibility.
Yeah.
And that's really, man, that's the choice.
Yeah, I think it's a game of really wrapping your head around the implications, right? It's like, what else would you do but accept? Like, what's the alternative but accept responsibility? Exactly. Like, let's just play it out for a sec.
Yeah.
You don't accept responsibility. You live by your day-to-day impulses and feel sorry for yourself. Quite rightly, you've had a hard life, but you feel sorry for yourself day to day, and you live an unfulfilled life, and then you die. Okay, that doesn't sound great.
No.
Maybe it's a bit more fair on you that you don't have to work as hard to make up for the people's mistakes, but you still have to live that life that you don't like. Or, option B, you can assume all of the responsibility and, with the scars on your arms, keep going anyway and have a shot at fulfillment, have a shot at happiness, success, whatever you want to call it. It's like, you have to pick one.
Yeah.
And by not picking one, you default into the first one. By not making a choice, the default is you're letting your life pass by, because time doesn't pause while you make your mind up. Yeah, you don't get to sit here and Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and and pick A, B, C, or D. Yes. Like time's passing whether you like it or not.
Deciding not to decide is still a decision.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, great. Okay, so the last question we ask on the podcast is the advice you would give to your younger self, like message in a bottle. I actually feel the whole podcast, it was in essence that.
Yeah, it really was.
It really was, yeah. So
I'll try and summarize it in less than a 40-minute tangent. Yeah. Sorry.
Try and distill it down into like one piece of wisdom to, let's say, like the 18-year-old version of you.
The 18-year-old version of me. Can I say two?
Yeah.
The first thing I would say is trust your gut. I would just say, dude, trust your gut. I'm going to go on a tangent. I don't know how true this is, so don't quote me, but I heard recently that they may be questioning the whole validity around the Big Bang Theory. Like the idea that we've all come to believe over the last 40 years or something about how the universe started. Now there might be flaws in that theory, and now it might not even be true. What? Does it get any bigger than that? No. Yeah. So what is a truth? What is a fact? Some things we believe to be facts actually may not be facts. One thing we absolutely can unequivocally assume is that how we feel internally, that is how we feel. If we've got a gut feeling about something, no external thing can say that's wrong. I think 18-year-old me needed to hear that your gut feeling has more credibility than you're giving it credit for. Like, trust it more. Because I just didn't have any faith in what I believed, what I felt, what I thought. I just assumed I was wrong about everything. Like, everyone else had a better idea than me. So I'd say trust your gut more. And the second thing I would say is that you're good enough. I would just say to him, like, dude, just as you are, with all of your flaws, not only are you good enough, but you're actually doing a great job. I would just say that to him. I'd say, dude, you're doing a good job. You're not perfect, but you're doing a good job. And I don't think enough people hear that, but I don't think particularly guys. I think guys take so much from hearing that. You know, if a guy gets a bit of feel like, bro, you smashed it. I think it does wonders for us.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. I can't speak on a female experience, but I know for a guy, if it comes from a place of like genuine, heartfelt meaning, like bro, you killed it. Yeah. Like, fucking well done, bro. Massive. And you feel, and it's from a person you respect, a role model. Yeah. That just fills you up. Like, that could be like the biggest needle mover ever. And I didn't really get that. Yeah. So I'd say that.
Yeah. And then, that's the journey. You get to give that to the former version of you. You become the person you always needed, and then you give it back to yourself.
Yeah, for sure.
We're building the #1 podcast for mindset, health, and performance. We're going to be diving deep into the experience, the psyche, and the behaviors of ourselves and our experience, as well as that of our guests.
And the reason why you should listen to this mindset podcast over other ones is most mindset podcasts, they just stay high level, they stay conceptual. And at the end of the day, they're not practical, meaning they don't give you actual simple, practical things that you can implement into everyday life. So in this podcast, we're going to teach you some principles, some high-level stuff, and we're also going to bring it down to things that you can actually change in terms of your daily habits and routines so that you can be fitter, more focused, and more fulfilled.
My name's Harri, this is Joe, and this is the Mindset X podcast.